You are listening to Spilling the Tea, a real estate podcast with Kristy Macero and Shelagh Maycheck.
Hello everyone, welcome to season 2 of Spilling the Tea. We are your hosts, Kristy Macero and Shelagh Maycheck.
Hello.
Today we are sitting down with our everyday man and public guest, Jeremy Pue, and resident agent David Smith of David Smith Homes Group. Today we will be discussing some cases of putting your foot in your mouth and some scenarios that have us internally screaming, please stop talking. Let's start off how we always do by asking Shelagh some questions.
Okay.
Shelagh, have you ever been in a situation where you said the wrong thing in an open house or a showing or...
Nothing pops into my mind where it's so mortifying that it's, playing on repeat rent free in my head, but I know I've absolutely mixed up words. Like in busy markets when we would have like 20, 30 people coming through an open house, I would be saying the same thing over and over and over again, and sometimes you kind of mix up your words. So, for example, I know for a fact I've said, instead of the primary bedroom upstairs has double sinks, it became the primary sinks have double bedrooms. And then I just continued on like I didn't say that.
So people thought you were stupid.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
They were like, are you having a stroke, my dear? I'm like, no, I'm good. Yeah, nerves got the best of me.
Yeah, that's fair. And what you say in an open house or in a sales situation can come back and haunt your nightmares. Mm-hmm. So, Shelagh, have you ever been in a situation where you've seen somebody talking and it ruin a sale or ruin a transaction or something gets ruined as a result of somebody talking too much or too little? Or
Yes, I've actually been on the benefiting end of somebody opening their mouth too many times. We were purchasing our first home, and it was the really crazy market in 2016. Lots of people through the open house. And the listing agent for this property was the seller's daughter. So she was related to the seller. And in the open house, there's this guy who's talking really loudly about how he's going to rip out the garden in the backyard. And it was beautifully landscaped, obviously cost a lot of money and was mature and had been there for quite a few years. And he goes, oh, I don't need any of that crap. It's so much maintenance. I'm just going to put my dog run back there. Put some gravel down. And I can see the listing agent listening to all of this. And so we're going, man, we really love the garden. It's so beautiful. I really like the flowers. And because we were excited about it. We were coming down from...
Especially like the flowers.
Yeah, especially those ones.
you have to remember, Shelagh and her husband were also coming down from the Arctic. Nothing grew up
We were
there.
just excited to have plants again.
Seen flowers in years.
The legal kind. And so, we wrote our offer and we ended up getting it accepted, but I can definitely see how that hurt him when he submitted his offer because they remember everything you say.
Yeah, and people ultimately, they want to sell to people they like.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
When I know if I'm going to a jewelry store or I'm going to buy a car or anything like that, I want to like the person I'm buying from. And if I don't like the person I'm buying from, I just won't buy anything that day.
Yeah.
Someone else will get that sale.
You're like, when do you work next? And they tell you, you're like, cool, I won't come in then.
Yeah, I'm not coming back. What's your name? I'm not coming back.
Yeah.
Okay, so Jeremy, you work with clients all the time. People get sensitive when they're putting themselves out there, especially in video, and you're working with a lot of people who do marketing and that kind of thing. And I imagine that, when you're in somebody's house, or you're learning what their marketing idea is, you could really open yourself up to maybe somebody saying the wrong thing or upsetting a client when you don't know you're upsetting them. Have you ever had a situation where that's happened to you?
Like where I've said the wrong thing?
Or someone around you?
I'm sure I say the wrong thing all the time. But it's usually I'm laying in bed that night and I'm like, oh, whoops. Oh, well.
Yeah, because
after the fact.
You don't know what people are necessarily proud of in their homes, for example. And
Totally.
We've told the Nutcracker story before, haven't we?
We have, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where they wanted the Nutcracker in all the pictures. So.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I imagine sometimes because you're probably also videoing agents if they're doing promo videos, but if they say something where you review the footage later, you're like, oh, we're going to edit that out.
It's, the stuff I have on file.
Or some idiot just saying the word fruit bridge instead of fruit bridge.
I kid you not, I could take down this entire office with
he
the stuff that I have on file.
He's got the stuff.
That's why everyone is so nice to me.
It's one
because I have B-roll stuff or interview stuff where they didn't know it was rolling, and I'm like, I have that forever.
I know he has all of our stuff.
I remember we asked Jeremy for a spoof reel or blooper reel one time, and he's like, I've got it.
Oh yeah,
he was already prepped.
He already had it.
Sends
it's in
it 5 minutes
in the
later.
back pocket.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think like people say the wrong thing by accident all the time,
Yeah.
and that's just more of an everyday thing. Not like there's no stories I can think of for me that really stand out, but I'm sure I say the wrong thing all the time.
So someone right now is like, oh yeah, I know Jeremy said this. No, I'm just kidding. But
Probably, yeah.
But
this
the
one
thing-
time,
the situation that like the reason why we get into these situations where someone quote unquote says the wrong thing, it's all perception. Okay, so it's all perception. Like who is saying that thing is the wrong thing to say? If it's
I'll
being-
tell you sometimes.
Oh,
BCREA are like our licensing body, like
Right.
with implied agency being so strictly kind of enforced these days.
Yeah.
The potential for a really talkative buyer all of a sudden ending up in an
Oh.
implied agency situation when
Yeah.
they walk into a listing or an open house or something like that, like
You're right. Some people are really
some
chatty off the
people,
gut, like
I
right away.
just want them to shut up, and
Yeah.
some of them won't, and I'm like, I really need you to stop talking right now
Yeah.
because you are disclosing things about yourself. I am representing the seller.
Yeah.
I am not representing you. And if you keep talking, and it's honestly, it's often like a middle-aged
older.
male
Yeah.
who just wants to impress.
Oh no.
And I'm like, buddy, you don't have to impress me. I wear a Casio and I'm hosting an open house on a Saturday afternoon. I'm not that wealthy. Like, I'm not that fancy, and I didn't drive here in a black Mercedes.
I
Like,
bet it's a digital Casio
please,
though.
it's a calculator.
oh, that's the good one.
Wow.
It is. It
Nice.
is. But I have honestly had on multiple occasions to tell people at open houses, I really need you to stop talking.
Yeah.
And I had politely been like, just deflecting and everything else. But as soon as they start disclosing really important information, I'm like, BCREA are going to come after me if this
Yeah.
person writes.
You're a
and
plant.
they've disclosed that,
Yeah.
and I've communicated it to my sellers. And I mean, that's who I'm working for. So it feels really, I don't like that feeling at all.
Yeah. Sometimes like people say too much.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They say too much and
I'm stressed.
yes.
Knocking teacups over.
Yeah.
it's
You feel
spill-
like you need one of
he's
those like
spilling
little
the tea.
stop signs on a stick and just be like, nope.
Yeah.
Shush.
Yeah.
Shh, don't tell me things.
Yeah.
I have like this one story that stands out where a client of mine said the wrong, well, I think said the wrong thing in a moment, but I was shooting a listing for an agent and the sellers, so their home is being sold, they're in the living room, agent's in the living room, I'm in the living room, and she comes over to me in front of her clients. She's like, hey, I need to talk to you for a second.
I'm so relieved this is a she because I was convinced it was going to be me.
And she goes, so I don't really like your videos.
The agent
So,
said this?
okay, yeah. So picture the scenario. So this is the person, she's speaking
Was
to
it
the
Kristy
person.
at Dublin Crossing?
No. She's speaking to the person that she has hired to market the home for her sellers that are there in the room. And she's like, I don't really like your videos. So I'm like, obviously I'm processing this all super quickly.
Yeah.
And I just looked at her sellers and I looked back at her and I was like, I don't really know why I'm here then.
Yeah.
But I think that's an instance where I'm like, yeah, you probably like time and a place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
a weird nervous
it's so
tick.
That was
Weird.
like a
I don't
serious
like the service you
serious-
provide that I'm currently paying for on behalf of these people in the other room.
in the same room.
In the same room.
In the
Oh,
same
no.
room.
Awkward.
Yeah.
What? How do you,
You
even?
called me.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not like you showed up.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's not like it was a free video that they won.
it was super bizarre.
Wow.
Can you win free videos?
From Jeremy? Yes, all the time.
All the time.
I gotta enter that contest.
Yeah.
He only gives it to his special friends. Okay, so the reason why we started this podcast is because I had a situation this year that does replay in my mind sometimes with regards to agents kind of saying the wrong thing and really destroying
Oh,
a
no.
social situation. Yeah.
The cringe.
And it wasn't with any kind of malicious intention. And I think that's the lesson here.
It doesn't always take intent.
It doesn't take intent. And basically, I'll paint you a little word picture. I'm out at a condo showing and I'm with my buyer and it's just her and I. And I was like Pregosaurus Rex, some kind of, waddling around this condo. And the agent wants to show us every single room. And it's so nice of her to do that. And she was so sweet. And we're going through every room, but every time she's there, she keeps talking about how great the condo is for a family. And she's like, this is such a great family neighborhood, and you could have a child in this room, and look, the bathroom vanity is big enough for a baby bath. And I was like, oh, you might be mistaken. Like, I'm the one having the baby and she's the buyer. So, we don't need to know that. Yeah. Like, kind of, it was very odd. And she was like, yeah, she's like, and so many walking paths so you can take your dog for walks and like all this stuff, just kind of implying this scenario for my buyer. And I thought for a moment maybe she was confused, thinking I was the buyer because we were both about the same age, we're both dressed nicely. But I did kind of say partway through, like, oh, no, I'm not buying it. Like, she's buying it. I'm the realtor, in case she missed that somehow. I don't know. So, but it kept going. So I'm assuming that that was part of her spiel, part of her sales point, and she really wanted to show us, like, literally every nook and cranny of the room.
She was committed.
Committed.
She didn't want to go off script.
Committed to the bit.
Yeah.
But what she didn't know was that this buyer I was taking out had just gotten divorced.
Ouch.
No family.
Oh.
And her dog just died.
No.
So here's this agent talking about a life that she could have in this condo that she just lost.
Yeah.
And I wish it was just her and I there, because I could say, okay, is this good for your office? Would this be good for a guest room? Do you feel like this is a fresh, exciting start for you? Like, it would have been a different conversation altogether. But instead, it was so awkward that I felt the need to, at the end of the showing, after the agent finally left, to apologize to her, because I just said, because she said something along the lines of like, oh, that agent is a little awkward. And I was like, I don't think she really understood the context. And I apologize, because sometimes agents kind of, they do their spiel and they don't really think. Yeah. Right. So it just didn't sit well in my mouth about it. And like, I think I called you, or I told, I put it in our group. Like, we have a group chat that we talk in, and I was like, this agent, like, so sweet, so wonderful, but like really read the room wrong, and like committed to reading the room wrong. And then I had some damage control to do after, and my client didn't end up buying it. And it just didn't feel good.
Yeah.
When I go out with clients, I want it to be like a good experience and a feel-good experience. And I always check in with them, like, are we having fun? Are you excited about the space? Can you feel yourself going forward here? Like, whatever it calls for, because, people buy for all different kinds of reasons, and they sell for all different kinds of reasons. And we can't assume why that person's buying or selling if we don't know the situation at hand.
Right.
So,
There must have been like a gut punch every time she opened her mouth and said another, oh, and this is so great for a crib and all this other stuff.
Yes.
And and there's no pet restrictions here and blah, blah, blah. And you can exit out this door, and you're like, stop.
Yes.
I think honestly, like, it's a decent rule of thumb. As soon as the listing agent, if they insist on being there for a showing, when the buyer's agent is also there, they should really just stop at like the bare minimum.
Some basics.
Some
and then
basics.
Step out.
Like, yeah, and even then, give us the interesting things about the property.
Yeah.
And then get out the way. I don't need you to stick around and tell me the kitchen's the one with the appliances.
Yes.
And the one with the beds are the bedrooms. Like, now leave before you put your foot in your mouth, or just continue to encroach on the time where we actually want the buyer to be able to feel like they can relax and talk to us openly. Yeah.
This was somebody definitely like setting the scene, but it was like the wrong scene.
You see that a lot on TV, but in reality, particularly out here in the Fraser Valley, like, not necessary.
No.
Maybe for like a very high-end luxury home with like a certain kind of blind that if you clap this way, it will go halfway down.
Yeah.
Like, that's useful.
That's right.
Yeah, like custom hidden features that if you walk in, you're not going to know it's there.
Yeah.
And so you come in, you're like, hey, here's these items, and I'm going to step outside so you have some privacy.
Yeah.
I'll be right here if you have any questions.
Right.
I love it when they offer to step outside.
Yeah.
Yes. I had a showing where just recently where I showed up to show, because it's a condo, and I just said, hey guys, and she was like, the agent was like, oh, are you just gonna give me the keys and I'll go up? And I was like, no. And I know that she wanted me to do that so bad, and I said, no. I said, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go upstairs with you. I said I didn't get an opportunity to turn on the lights. Traffic was horrific. They knew I was gonna be late. It was communicated. But when I got there, I said, no, I'm going to go upstairs. I'm going to point out a couple things to you, and then I'm going to step outside and I'm going to sit down the hallway so you guys can speak freely. The second time they came back to show, I just handed her the keys and said, said, yeah, go upstairs.
Yeah.
You've already
Right.
been there. But so the service to my seller is that I'm taking them in, I'm showing them the things that are unique to the property, and then I'm getting the heck out so that they can
Right.
start picturing themselves in that space.
Yeah.
And so the nanny cam can pick up their chat, right?
Yeah.
So this is
Alexa.
a vacant.
Review it later.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It was a totally vacant listing. So, so definitely not anything like that. But I could tell that the agent just appreciated that I was letting her do her job. And that is her job. Her job is to take her clients in because she knows her clients and I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was just one of those things. So, David, have you ever kind of been in a situation where you've had an agent around you, like kind of say the wrong thing or destroy the sale or anything like that?
Oh, I'm the agent.
Oh, you're the agent. Okay, David, confession
Okay.
time.
8 years ago. This was before I'd done a single transaction. Okay, so I feel like you got to give some points for the fact that I was young and inexperienced and
Brand new.
But
Brand new.
licensed and working.
licensed and working, right?
Gotcha.
Wee
Thanks,
baby
Jared,
David.
for making that worse.
I was new then too.
Yeah,
I know
you
the
were.
story.
So I had some clients who I'd taken out. They were moving over from the island, so I picked them up at the ferry in my, I think it was a 2002 Toyota Corolla.
Reliable car.
Reliable
Great car.
car. I had scraped every penny together to get it, right?
I had one of those.
Yeah, great car. Just not in 2016. And I took them over to this property in Clayton, and I walk in there, and it's a townhouse. And we'd already had a little bit of an experience by then. So I'd been picking them up at the ferry, driving around, showing them different properties. And on one of those properties, we had written an offer. We'd got that offer accepted, and I was all very excited and very happy for them. And we're in our subject removal time frame, and I get a call from the client over on the island. He says, David, I know I told you that our property was sold, but it wasn't actually sold. It was just in subject removal.
Oh.
And I'm like, oh, well, so what's going on? And he goes, the sale just collapsed. And I'm like, well,
no.
we're going to have to walk away from the accepted offer that we have on the basis of financing. If your property is not sold, then you're not going to get the financing and we're not going to be able to proceed, right? Collapse the deal. Disappointment for me, hoping for, first paycheck in 6 months. And so, and I was genuinely like hopeful on that property for them. They then come back the next weekend. We're out shopping again. And I meet this realtor in this townhouse. And he's just suave and charming and everything I would long to be one day.
Wow, his head is 10
know.
sizes right
I might
now.
have said that for him. And he gets talking with me and he's building rapport because that's kind of, you do try and do that as
And
a
he's
listing agent.
schmoozy.
Yeah, he's very schmoozy and will be named later on in the story. So, he just gets me talking and is asking a few questions and yada, yada, yada. And I was like, between you and I, we didn't manage to get our subjects off of these guys like last week because their property wasn't yet sold, but it's now finally sold. And he's like, oh, yeah. And he kind of just like rolls with it. And I have no idea what's about to transpire over the next 2 or 3 hours. Apparently, he just seems to have got on his phone and texting like every real estate group chat that he possibly can. And he's like, just so you know, there's this new agent in town. His name's David Smith. He's taking around unqualified buyers and failing to remove subjects.
Oh.
Within
I got that text.
2 or 3 hours. Yes. Within 2 or 3 hours, Kristy had called me. And Nathan Meyer, now up in Kamloops, had also called me as well and been like, hey,
What are you doing?
what are you doing?
Yeah.
Just so you know, Matthew Ruff is basically telling every realtor in Langley that you're not going to remove subjects on a property. And I'm like, oh my goodness. And it's funny because Matt and I are obviously now like genuinely
Everyone's
good friends.
Great friends.
We're going to Mexico together next month.
Yeah.
Like
Oh.
we've shared many, many happy memories.
Yeah.
But the origin story of our friendship was me then calling Matt and being like, Matthew, I appear to have said something that I shouldn't have said. I put my foot in my mouth as per the title of this podcast. And I shouldn't have said it. And but I need you to stop telling people that I'm not going to remove subjects for my clients because I'm only just getting started and all I have left is my reputation and you're about to soil it like royally. And it was my fault. I hold my hands up. I never made that mistake ever again. I didn't over disclose about my buyers ever again. It was just youthful inexperience at the time. And we worked it all out. And like literally by the end of that phone call, we were best of friends, and well, other than Jeremy, obviously. And that was it.
Yeah. And so the real estate industry is really great in the sense where like we will look out for each other.
You guys did look out for me because you and Nathan called me immediately and were like, you need to talk to this guy like now.
Well, we want people to do well, and we know David's obviously going to do a good job. So he was doing a good job, and it's actually good that he was forthcoming with Matt. Like that's something that you would be forthcoming about. But of course, things can also be taken aside.
And Matt wasn't trying to destroy me.
No.
I think he was
It was like
watching
out.
He was watching out for the friends that he already had.
100%.
Exactly.
He just didn't know that his future best buddy was the one he was talking to.
It's
Yeah,
funny,
he was
'cause when
looking
you were
out for
describing
everyone
the agent,
else.
your hands were like gesturing in a certain way. I'm like,
Yeah.
I wonder if he's talking about Matt Ryan.
They were slightly clammy.
Can you not picture Matt being like, oh boy, everybody needs to hear about this?
Immediately. MTZ. Press release.
Well, it's good. Like we do look out for each other because there are so many agents out there that are there to just screw around and like throw mud at the wall and see what sticks. And so sometimes people can unfortunately get bad reputations for not being a good realtor. Now we knew David, like, because if it's a bad realtor and you're like, oh yeah, that guy. And then you don't care. But when you care because you know that person is a good realtor, it's like, oh, hey, you got to clean this up now. Like clean it up. So ended up being, and of course,
and we cleaned it up. We secured a great property for that couple, and
awesome.
Everything was happy in the end.
So did you and Matt do that deal together, or?
That was not a deal that we did.
Yeah, okay.
It was not that property.
Okay. It's so funny. So I had another story that kind of fell down this train because I know it kind of came rushing back to me when I was thinking about this topic. Do you guys ever have situations where your clients are meeting and they really shouldn't be meeting, like the buyer and the seller, or like?
It's usually over like a $20 furniture deal.
Oh,
why is it always like a used shovel?
Everything to keep them like.
Yeah.
It's like you have an agent and you have an agent.
Yeah.
And I know it seems irritating, but all communication needs to go between your agents
Yes.
until the shovel comes up.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, well, just give them my email address. And I'm like,
You're like, no, like I will not give you.
Yeah.
So the thing is like, as long as people have emotion and are attached to their money in any form, we will have a job. People are always like, robots will replace you. We can just go online and get an evaluation for our house and we can fill out the forms ourselves. We don't need realtors. No. As long as you have emotion and you are tied to your money, forget it. And so I'm standing on this property with this seller and this buyer, and everyone's chatting and everyone's getting along, and that's really great. And
You're like, this is great.
Yeah, and we're watching the septic inspector like dig up a huge hole in this man's perfectly manicured lawn because he can't find the lid, and it's awkward for me.
this is your poop. It's going to be my poop one day.
Basically bonding over the poop. So anyways, and I'm there being like, okay, and I'm always standing kind of in between the clients because I want to hear what's going on because, the man's like, I've got some furniture I want to sell you. And like, I'm just like, because you have to be careful of these conversations. They can get real greasy really quickly. Yeah. So I'm sitting there and I'm just like watching this man dig up this perfect lawn, like horrified for this man and his lawn. And like they're chatting. And my client just very innocently was like, oh, we love your home so much. We can't wait to, make it ours. And he goes, oh, what do you plan on doing? And she goes,
no.
Oh, no.
We're going to redo the floors, get rid of all that tile. And he's like, I just put the tile in.
That's also why I tell sellers not to put in anything new right before they sell. It's gonna come out anyway.
He was like, that's our imported tile from Italy that was hand laid by nuns. Like it was insane. And I was like, oh my God. And I'm having
we shipped the nuns in.
like it was like, like mixed with their tears. Like it was crazy. So I was just like, huh. And I'm like, all the oxygen goes out of the room, but we're outside. So I'm like, looking at my client, and she's now realizing she has said too much. And the guy's like, look of panic on his face that his perfectly laid tile, imported floors, are going to be ripped up And then thankfully, like, it was like the real estate gods heard my silent screams, and the inspector stepped up and was like, "Oh, hey guys, managed to find the lid. It's right here." And I was like, "Oh, saved by the poop!" Like, I was so happy. So sure enough, like, everyone's attention turned, and I looked at her and I was like, X-nay on the renovation, May, okay? Like, kind of like, just be like, don't say anything. This guy's proud, right? Like, he's proud of his property. And she was like, "What can we demo?" Like, it was insane.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you have to be
my
so careful
gosh.
because you don't know the attachment. And just like
Oh,
Sheila's
yeah.
situation about the dog run and the garden, like, this was like, they were like face to face. And without that inspector finding that lid, I don't even know what the next thing would have been coming out of that. But that deal wasn't done. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he was so proud of his darn tile floors. I was like, oh my gosh.
People get so attached.
They do.
Yeah,
Perspective.
people think like,
They
oh, if
do.
they're selling whatever, they won't care. I can tell them anything I want. But even though somebody is selling a property, doesn't mean there's no emotional attachment to it. Like,
Totally. Well, when we bought our place in Alder Grove, there was an ornamental cherry tree in the front yard. And so you can't eat the cherries. It looked nice for 3 days a year.
Yeah.
yeah.
Fruit everywhere.
And then it was just like a mess and we had wasps. So it made it through one season. And then I got a chainsaw. I was like, meow, like took the thing down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm like working in the front yard one day and there's a couple walking down the street.
Oh, no.
They stop, they introduce themselves to me, and they were the people that originally built the home.
Oh.
And the husband is talking to me and I'm looking over at the wife and all she keeps doing is looking over at the stump
Oh my gosh.
in the front yard.
Probably like a memorial tree or something. Oh no.
I have no idea.
Okay.
But people
goodness.
people get attached
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
to stuff. And
Damn
to
it,
us
Jim,
it was
I told
just a
you we should have
nuisance.
excluded the ornamental cherry tree.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
no, Helen.
Yeah, totally. And I'm looking at her and I'm like, she looks like she might cry.
Oh, no.
I don't know what I did, but
I understand that though. Like,
Yeah.
I went into my father built a house when I was being born. So he needed an extra bedroom. Their house that they lived in wasn't big enough. So they built this house, and it ended up selling. And I walked in after, and things had changed enough that, like, but in my head I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you changed those things. Like, people get attached to their houses,
yeah.
Totally.
right?
totally.
So you just have to be so careful when you're talking. And if there's ever a lesson to learn here, it's, you have to be careful because you don't understand the lens in which people are receiving your information.
Yeah.
So not every sale is a happy sale. Not every sale is, a situation where you want to talk about the renovations you want to do. Anything you want to do that's personalized, save it for later. Like, don't step into the house where there's probably recording devices and someone's going to be like, oh yeah, I would totally rip all this down and get rid of this area. And like, people listen to that kind of thing. So
Yeah.
Bet.
you go through the home, you have those discussions after. Just got to be careful of what you say. And agents, if you're listening to this podcast, like, don't assume anything about the buyer. Don't assume.
Yeah. And agents also shouldn't get too fancy. Could I tell one that makes me feel better about my
Please.
first year?
Yes, absolutely. Please.
I was down in Ocean Park, South Surrey, which is
Nice.
quite a fancy neighborhood, right? And I was looking at properties that were, beyond a dream home for me. Like, in that season of my life, I'd never stepped foot in properties like that before. But I really have never been particularly overly interested in the properties. Always been about the people for me. And so I had this lovely couple. They just moved into town. Both of them had great jobs and they were shopping at a really solid price point, right? And I was doing, Jer remembers, it was 70, 80, 90, 100-hour work weeks, right? So I was just doing whatever I could to try and support my family. And I ended up on Easter weekend. They reached out to me on Good Friday and were like, hey, we'd like to go and see this property. And I was like, absolutely, we can do that. And then I reached out to the listing agent, and the listing agent's like, no availability on Saturday and no availability on Easter Sunday. And they're insisting on being there. It's a nice property. So we managed to get a time for Easter Monday. And I drop everything I'm doing on Easter Monday, head on over, show this property to the buyers. And I arrive, and this agent will go nameless because it doesn't look very good on them. But they were an agent that showed up in the black Mercedes and the black suit. They were that kind of typical luxury real estate agent, right? Like the white teeth, the tanned skin, the perfect hair, all that. I'm not. And And he starts like showing them around the property, and he's very dismissive of me. And I'm like, okay, whatever. I'm not gonna let my ego get in the way
do your
here.
thing. Yeah.
Go do your thing,
Yeah.
and then you're gonna get out of the way, right? And we do a property research folder for all of our buyers before we go and see anything, so they were aware of like other comparables in the neighborhood. And he goes, well, I'm a little bit surprised that I'm meeting you here. And my buyers are like, well, why? And he says, well, I've got this other great listing just down the street, and I thought you'd start there because it's the better one.
Oh my god.
And he was like, didn't David tell you about this property as well?
Oh, ew.
With me, like right
Ew.
there. And the wife, to her credit and to my great joy,
Actually,
just tore a strip off him.
Good.
She was like, actually, David did send us that listing and we didn't want to see it because it didn't fit with our criteria. And he's here on an Easter Monday after trying to get in all weekend, and you weren't the one that was able to make it work. And she just tore a strip off
yeah,
him.
she
And I was
wasn't
like,
buying what he was
She
selling.
wasn't, so he
Good.
definitely got in front of his skis too much. And yeah.
Could
he
you
had
imagine as a seller hearing a realtor in your home
talked down to a buyer's
Ooh.
agent?
or just
Or like,
promote another
I'm
listing?
surprised you're
Yeah.
not looking at my
Oh
other
yeah,
listing.
promote another listing. Yeah, totally.
Wild.
It was wild. I couldn't believe it was going on, and I've never forgotten it. I've never forgotten it, and I've never done a deal with them. But every time I see his name, I just remember that moment, and I remember that amazing client.
Props to her.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. I like that story. That's a good one to end on.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Salvaged my reputation. Maybe.
No, you're fine. You're good. The thing is, people learn, and a lot of this stuff is happening, and it's not ill-intended,
No,
right? Like we
right.
have to always remember when somebody says something that they shouldn't. What's the intention of their words?
Yeah.
Did they know? Right? They
Mm-hmm.
might not know. So this episode, I think, we'll dedicate to Matt Ruff.
To Matty.
We have to. Okay, to Maddie. Cheers, everyone.
Cheers
To Maddie.
to spilling the tea.
Thank you for listening to Spilling the Tea, a real estate podcast with Kristy Massero and Shelagh Maycheck.